And he had a soft spot, and we just happened by chance. Just one day coming down the road, and it was like, hey, that would make a cool brewery. And that's kind of how we ended up here. That's the short
right.
version of it. But
there's always a short and long.
Yes, we've been doing our research. The building is just created such great. It has its own character.
Yeah.
And we've had so many of the past owners come in and talk about what we've done, how they love what we've done to their building. They always called it their building. All the way from the owner, 1946. The granddaughter of the owner, when it was El Paso Electric Supply, came in, and she's provided us with pictures of the brewery from the 40s and 50s, or the building from the 40s and 50s. The church that was here for a while, the pastor and his family have been in and have loved what we've done with it. So yeah, the building has its own character that still continues.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I know, it does. I love the character and the stories you've told behind it. So tell me a little bit about some of your partners and why you decided we should make a brewery.
Oh, so there's three of us.
Yeah.
Myself, Ryan Close, he'll join us remotely if he can, and then Kevin Olson. He has Kevin can't be here today there with his contracting business, but yeah. Well, it was a long journey to get here to be a brewery. It wasn't like, hey, let's just open up and be cool and have a brewery. It was a very, very long process, and I was probably the last one on board to do it. But it just seemed like the right decision. They coerced me into doing it, and it's been great. I haven't even looked back. It was a great decision that we made to do.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about obviously COVID last year was the whole thing, right? And so the word that we all hate, pivot,
right.
So talk to me a little bit about, last year when you opened and kind of the process of that.
Of all of last year, yeah, we were scheduled to open May of last year. I mean, when we got this building, we graffitied the whole wall. May 1, that was our goal. And obviously that didn't happen. And then it was July, and then that didn't happen. And then it was October, and that didn't happen. It just continued. But we were fortunate that we you got to take the positive attitude with it.
Right.
There was nothing you were going to do about it. We couldn't change it. It was a battle we couldn't win. And we just kind of looked at the bright side that we were in a position that we could make it through. It wasn't hard. It wasn't easy. We had to get real creative. We had to work with our partners in the community. There was a lot behind the scenes to hold back and make it through.
Right.
But it was the right decision. We could have opened it with to-go sales, things of that nature. We contemplated that. But really it was the brewing community that we focused on, and we knew we were in a better position than those who had just opened or had been opened. And so we really wanted to push business to them instead of taking it away from them. And that's kind of was our stance.
Okay.
So that was the delay, but
Yes.
it's when you can't win, you might as well find a way to work with it and make a positive out of it. So it actually worked out in our favor in that we were ready to open when we could. Everything was done. I mean, we would come in and look for things to do, which is unheard of when you open a new business. And like our industry night, everybody walked in, they said they've never seen a brewery open that's this open. And we had a whole year, so we had some extra time.
Right, totally.
Yeah.
So how did you initially fund your business? And talk to us a little bit about the obstacles that come with that.
Oh, funding, yeah, that's a fun topic. Originally, we sought investors, and it's funny how when you start talking to people, everybody has money, everybody wants to give you money, everybody wants in on it until you go out and ask for that check. And all of a sudden it's the wrong time, or I just don't have it, or I've already invested. There were a million reasons that the money wasn't there all of a sudden. But we had secured some investors, and that went south. They didn't have the stamina. They were ready and they agreed, but this wasn't a quick process. From the time we secured funding, it was over a year before we could find this building, and they just didn't have the stamina to commit the money for over a year just sitting idle. And so we ended up having to self-fund it. And that was a hard decision. That was really hard. It's like, wow, do we really go this, still do this with no outside funding? And it was like, hell yeah, you know, we're not gonna let this stop us. And so yeah, the funding was a lot of ups and downs with that. Yay, we got it, no we don't, yes we do, no we don't. Ultimately, no we don't, and what do we do at that point? And so there were some hard conversations we had to have on our team regarding how do we do this? Do we change our business model? Do we downsize or, you know, scale things down? What do we cut out? How do we make this happen? But ultimately, we were able to self-fund it, and it got real creative. You know, Kevin's an independent contractor, so he has his own business to fund and run. Ryan works for a company that luckily he's able to work remote. And then me as a school teacher, we had to really tighten the belts all the way around for all three of us to make this work. But it was something we believed in, and we knew we could do it. So.
I love that. Well, talk to us a little bit kind of about the legal aspects. So we were talking before a couple of weeks ago about your name.
Yeah.
You know, and so
the many names.
The many names. So and then talk to us about kind of the names and how you curated that, as well as, you know, are you an LLC, an S corp?
Okay. Yeah, I'll start with the business type first. We are an LLC, and I'll be honest, that's what you always do. It's just that's when you start a business, you start as an LLC until your accountant and lawyer tells you different. And I'll be honest, that's how we are. We have been told we have to change, or should, don't have to, but we should change that over. But you know, and anything you read about business, starting a business, start an LLC. So that's the first thing you do. You go start an LLC. That's how we ended up as an LLC. You know, things would be a lot different when we started. If we'd have known about the resources at the SBDC, things of that nature, we would have taken a different path, probably the proper initial path instead of having to change. It hasn't caused any issues or problems, but we are having to make some changes now that detract us from doing our jobs. So yeah, but yeah, so that's how we ended up as an LLC. Is everybody told us start an LLC, so we did. You know. The legalities, we've had nothing major, but we've had our legal ups and downs. On the liquor side of it, that was no problem with the state and the federal government, the legalities with that. That's very cut and dry, lots of resources. The brewing community is so helpful. They helped us when we had questions. But the legalities came in with trademarks and names. That's where we really have not struggled, just that's where we've had our ups and downs. This is probably our third name. I don't know how many names we went through. We waited years trying to figure out a name. We thought, oh, that'll be easy. No, that was one of the hardest things ever to come up with is what is your name going to be that's you, but still memorable, that's not 50 characters long. So originally we were going to be Lucky 13 Brewing. The number 13 is my partner's birthday. It's my favorite number. There's a bunch of things to it. And so we started looking into it, and there was a bar in Utah. Contacted them. They're like, we don't care, no problem. But Lagunitas Brewing in California has a beer called Lucky 13 Red Ale. So we contacted them, their legal department. They came back, yeah, we'll do a coexist. We agreed we'd never name a beer Lucky 13. And the legal department agreed, and it was a few weeks later they called back and said, yeah, our marketing doesn't agree. So the marketing department apparently trumps the legal department, and so they said no. So it was like, oh, now we're back to we'd already registered everything. We had our business there. Everything was under that. So we had to make some changes there. The name comes from Ryan and I growing up, my partner. We grew up since grade school, and we grew up racing in the racing community, and a little competitive edge, always working on stuff, always making it better, and that carried over to the beer, even at home brewing, you know, whether it was competitions or just for friends and family, making it better, never being totally satisfied with our product. And so it's like, well, we're always working on the beer, so why not go with that same theme, mash mechanics. So the mash comes from a process in the brewing process, and then the mechanics were always working on it. So that's kind of how we got there.
I love that story.
Yeah.
It's actually more classic than people realize.
Yeah.
The name is always the hardest.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah, you don't think about it. That was crazy. Mm-hmm. Legally, we also then trademark. That opened up a whole new world to us. We thought, file a trademark, you're done. It's yours. You know, the government says, sure, you have a trademark. Not the case, not even close. We've had to change our logo due to a trademark question, and it comes down to the point, is it worth fighting? That's what it came down to. So then we're hiring attorneys for that, and nothing against attorneys, but they were the only one going to make money on the deal if we fought it. And so we had to come to an agreement with another brewery with our logo. So it wasn't the name, well, they didn't like the name, but legally they didn't have any grounds on the name. But it was originally we had a gear in our logo, and that was the one thing that could have possibly been contested. So again, attorney fees to get it changed and come to a mutual agreement with the other establishment to get that done. So we've used our attorney, unfortunately, but he's been great. It's been a good process. It's good to have somebody that you can trust to go to for these needs. Legally, we've used them, look over our articles of operation, just to make sure that the partnership is set up properly to protect all individuals, all vested interest in the partnership. That was important to us too, to make sure that everything was spelled out. You know, if A happens, then B happens. If C happens, D happens. And so it's just to protect everybody all the way around. So yeah, that was kind of our legal ups and downs, but luckily nothing major that we couldn't overcome.
Yeah. Well, I think there's several facets that people can relate to, because you think it's going to be one thing, and then it turns out to be something
totally different.
Something else.
Yeah. And the big thing in our industry is the trademark issue. In the liquor industry, it doesn't matter if it's beer, liquor, wine. For example, if you name a beer or something, even if you don't trademark it, but you've been using it, you can't even open up a brewery under that name, or you can't even open a distillery on that name. It's totally across the board. And so if you think of every single beer or bottle of wine, bottle of liquor that's ever been produced with a name on it, those are now taken. Even if they haven't been copyrighted, they have legal rights to them for use. So you'll start to see, from us, the beer names are getting crazy. They're spelled goofy. They're just these crazy names because we are actually running out of ideas and words. we are running out of words in the English language to call stuff. Right. And so that has been an obstacle that we have to overcome. And every time we come out with a beer, we have to go check. Does somebody have it? Does it not? And we haven't gotten any info, but breweries have with technology when you can instantly look it up. It used to be regional. If you heard word of mouth, then you may have an issue. But now with Google, you can get a letter from halfway across the United States saying, "Hey, we already have a beer named that. You can't use that." It's like, okay, you know. So that is currently our industry's biggest legal challenge right now.
I think that's pretty consistent across the board, and I've heard that multiple times.
Yeah.
So, and that leads me kind of to the next kind of phase of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So, marketing in COVID for one.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother animal.
Yes.
But also, just talk to us a little bit about kind of opening in the marketing channels and the ecosystem that you use that you found was really effective for you all as you opened, and the continuity with that.
We have two things going for us. One is kind of in our name, we do it ourselves. So our marketing is internal right now. The other thing with our industry, though, is we're a fun industry. We don't require a lot of marketing, I'll be honest. We have not had to go outside for marketing. We do social media has been our best platform to use for that, and we do it internally and work with that. We are in a position, it's almost embarrassing to say it, but I am also proud to say it, we don't need more customers almost at the moment. We're so busy that we're afraid to push stuff, and we're looking at events like Memorial Weekend's coming up, and it's like, how hard do we push this for ourselves internally? So we're at a very good position, a grateful position for that. So our marketing has been pretty slim. We haven't had to focus a lot on it at this point, but we're on top of it. So all through last year, we used social media to keep people posted and interested what we were doing. We were doing giveaways before we opened. To keep people interested. So it was just the marketing. We've been fortunate enough to get a lot of exposure through organizations like you guys. The SBDC has been amazing with the exposure. Local media, the newspaper, the Gazette, the Independent, all the news channels have been great with us, working with us to help with that exposure. We're not oblivious to the fact we're going to have to change as the novelty wears off. So that is stuff we have been discussing. What's our next steps now? Now that when the novelty wears off, where do we go and how do we keep the momentum going? So.
Well, I would say too, this community is very peculiar and wonderful in the sense that I'm sure you had other businesses, other breweries, come alongside you, and there's a lot of pats on the back. I feel like between breweries, like you do this really well, we do this really well. We can collaborate and really spur each other on towards better.
It is a tight community. The brewing community is unlike any other business I've ever seen. Through other small businesses and businesses I've been involved with, never have I been in anything where there's really not a competitiveness to it. It's a collaboration. Matter of fact, next week we're going to Peaks and Pines to collaborate a brew with them. So, I mean, I'm going into their production facility to brew with them. There's no secrets. They don't hide anything, and same thing here. So that in our industry is a wonderful aspect of the industry. It makes it actually fun to be in this industry.
I agree. And that leads me to my next question. So talk to me, if you had 30 seconds to say what Mechanix is to somebody, what would you say?
Yeah, I had to look at an elevator quote, elevator.
I didn't want to use that, but I was just like,
I was
something.
But I was like, oh, what is that? And I was like, oh, I actually don't have one. It's again, the breweries are synonymous with fun, and so you mentioned somebody, brewery or beer, and that's the end of my part of the conversation. It's all they're like, oh, where are you? When are you open? What kind of beers do you have? What do you do? Everything that comes that way. So we're very fortunate with that. But we're a family-oriented brewery. Community brewery that has a beer for everyone. That was our focus, that it was a beer for everyone. And I know it's more of a tagline or a slogan, but that kind of gets it across that some breweries specialize in certain styles, but we were like, you know what, we want to accommodate everybody. We offer a lot of non-alcoholic options as well, non-beer options. So that was kind of our tagline, a beer for everyone.
Yeah. And you've talked a little bit about the beer industry and those types of things. So talk to me a little bit about why it matters that we have a brewery here on this part of town, in this space. Why did you think this is it?
So this wasn't it for a long time. We went through 2-3 other buildings. One fell through. We backed out of one. Zoning there was always something. It was over a year before this happened, and we'd actually had to hit the brakes. That was a very rough time for us. That's when we lost all of our funding, our outside funding. All within a week, we lost a building, we lost our funding, and I'm sure 2 or 3 other things happened in that week. It was a terrible week. And we just said, you know what, hit the brakes, let's just stop. It's not working. Let's reevaluate. We actually just said, you know what, let's take 3 or 4 weeks off. I'm not going to discuss the brew with anybody. We're not going to call each other. We're just going to take a break from it. It literally, it all just fell apart, just instantly. And for whatever reason, I have absolutely no idea why I drove down Pikes Peak. Had no reason to be down here. I'm a school teacher. My school's on the other side of town. I don't do business down here. I had no reason to be driving on this road. And I walked by and there was a big sign in the window for lease, and it was like, hey, that's a pretty cool. I was like, that would make a cool brewery, and that was the week later, and then the momentum just started to roll, and it never stopped after that. So that's how we ended up here, downtown. The one thing that really about this space was it was to be on the ground floor. We really always wanted to be a keystone in a community. We didn't want to be, we're not on Tejon. There's a lot of business on Tejon, and that's a great place for them. It serves a great demographics down there, but we wanted to be more of a keystone location. And when we started looking at this, I'll be honest, we had a crack house, literally a crack house in our parking lot. There was an abandoned building next to us. There was another building on the corner that had been abandoned. And we still went for it because we saw that we could be at the very beginning of this part of the community. And so it fit into what our business model was going to be as well. And it allowed us to grow, well, we thought it was going to allow us to grow slowly. And that quickly changed with everybody else seeing the same thing, you know, and this end of town being developed the way it is.
Right. And with all the breweries in town, talk to me a little bit about some of the similarities you have within the community, some of the differences. Tell us a little bit about your beer.
Yeah, so, you know, every brewery is unique to itself. It's an art to making beer. It's no different than a bakery. You can go to 3 bakeries and they are all different. They all make cake, they all make bread, and it's the same thing. Every brewer has its own style. Every brewery has its techniques that lend its own uniqueness to each facility. And then the culture is different, the locations. And as we've mentioned, the brewing community is just so amazing to be part of, that we help each other, that we collaborate. So that lends that uniqueness to every location. So we're not taking away from anybody as you open. Brewery density isn't, we're not over, we don't have too many yet. And the customers like that option, that they can go from place to place and unique. What separates us, I think, from a lot of the breweries in town is that our tagline, a beer for everyone. Because, you know, like I said, some breweries focus on styles, and that's great, but not everybody cares for that style. And so that's the one thing that kind of separates us. And the fact that we really push a lot of non-beer drinking items. The craft sodas that we make, our seltzer options are awesome for those who they like to drink but not beer. So that was kind of what set us apart.
Do you have food too?
We do not. We all love to cook, but none of us want to do it for a living. And so we want to also support the community with food trucks. I know that gives another avenue for the community to be small business owners as well. And so we've really worked with all the food trucks, and that's been great because then it brings variety every day. You know, you come in, if you came in every day, you can get a different meal with your beer. You know, so that's been a great way to bring in change to the brewery as well.
Especially the rotations and, you know, something for everybody. It makes that collaboration, like we talked about, even more, you know, enhanced, I feel like.
It does. It gives us our collaboration not only in our own industry, but now we have a collaboration across industry, which has been really, really nice to do.
That's wonderful. And I love the fact that you talk about how you don't really have to do a whole lot of marketing right now,
no,
but you know
right
that
now.
at some point.
Yes. Oh, yes. No,
that will come.
We are very well aware of how fortunate we are at this point. But we're always looking and keeping our fingers on the pulse of the community.
Right.
What do we need to do? What does the community want and need? And so it's not about us. It is about the community. Because without the community, we don't exist.
Exactly.
And so.
Right. I love that. And we're going to have Jackie from ABC Bank come up and talk a little bit all things finance, which is her lane anyways. So.
And not mine. That's where I wish Ryan was here. I'll do the best I can on this.
Yeah, the finance part isn't everybody's favorite part. It's my favorite part.
Oh, I know. It's absolutely one of the most important parts.
Yes, for sure.
Yes.
So what is the hardest thing? It sounds like you had a tough go of it at the beginning when you were trying to find financing or find funding.
Yeah.
But since you've opened, what's the hardest thing you've discovered about the financial aspects of the business?
Since we've opened, it's the managing the money. Now you have cash coming in, but you don't want to let go of those tight reins of where the cash goes out. All of a sudden now you have a lot more expenses that you never had. Even on the build out, you had your contractors or supplies, equipment, whatever, and you kind of knew where that was in your plan as you were planning to open. But now you get open and all of a sudden you've got, your TV bill is now due. Your inventory skyrockets. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, we had factored inventory in, but now all of a sudden we are busy and we're busier than we expected. So now our inventory is twice, triple, 4 times what we expected. And so managing the cash outflow and keeping your eyes on that. Where is the money going and why is it being used? Because you have money coming in. And that's a big difference. You know, when we all, in our own personal finances, when money's going out and the money's not coming in, we get very tight with it and we know where every penny goes. That's hard. You don't want to lose that as the money starts coming in. And so you really got to keep an eye on where is it going and why is it going there.
Right. Yeah, that's very important, and especially when you're new to a business, you know the brewery and the business of brewing beer, but the financial aspects a lot of times is the hardest part for people.
It is. Our team is absolutely amazing. I'll be honest. It's the team that we put together, and not just the owners, but our staff that are here today and the staff that stayed late last night. It's the team that is really accountable for that as a whole team, and that has made a huge difference. And on the owner team, we're very fortunate that everybody has been in small business or worked for small business at some point in their lives. So everybody has a very good understanding of what we need to do or not do. We've all seen or done things we shouldn't have done. And so having that background knowledge it has been just invaluable on the money side. Yeah.
So let's talk about expenses. You mentioned a little bit about that. So for every either $100 or dollar, however you want to break it down, if you know, how does that break down as far as your fixed expenses, payroll, all that good stuff?
And I can't answer. That was one of the things last night. We were talking this morning, talking to Ryan on the phone. We're working up our first actual profit loss P&L statement right now. So I can't honestly answer that. And it's not just our current, we're so new. We still have expenses from the build out, things of that nature that are detracting from, you know, where is the actual dollar going or percentage of the dollar going. So that was one of the things this morning. I was like, dude, can we get some numbers? He's like, he doesn't have them yet. So
yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah. And again, that's why it is so important to keep an eye on your money. Why it's going out is we have some obligations that we have to do, whether we have the money or not. And so you really got to keep an eye on it and know where it's going.
So this question might be one that you also don't have an answer to since things are pretty new, but have you had to make any changes? I know you have kind of a lot of non-recurring expenses at this point, so things related to construction that aren't going to keep happening, but have you had to make any changes yet with how you're spending your, the money that's coming in?
Not as of yet, no. Everything's still pretty on par where we expected to be, what we had budgeted. We didn't have any real surprises come about that were surprise expenses. We kind of had everything. Again, that was that golden lining of waiting a whole additional year. It was like, well, now we have some time. Let's really think this through. What does this process look like? What does this process look like? And it's like, oh, this has a process, but it's going to cost X amount of dollars. So we were able to build that in to our projections. So that was a fortunate part. And again, everybody on the team has a good, solid understanding of where we need to be and where to go, how to get there. So that's helped out as well. Right. I'll be honest, I can't imagine trying to do this without having the background or the support on the financials. It would be very, very difficult. Your home financials do not convert over to business financials. I mean, you can keep a balanced checkbook at home, that's good for you, but it's not the same at this level.
Right.
And nothing's changed. We were fortunate enough that we were able to really keep an eye on that.
Good. Yeah, it's a little bit different when you have people working for you, and their lives depend on you giving them a paycheck, and you have rent to pay and all that. So it is a lot different. So projections, you sat down and did projections before you opened. Yeah. Are you? And I know this is a little off script, but
no, you're good.
Are you on track as far as you know, based on?
Yeah, we're doing better than our projections, and it was kind of funny. Last night I went through I pulled up our business plan. And a very comprehensive business plan that we did, and I started looking at our projections from that, and that was 2 years ago, and it was very close.
That's awesome.
So that kind of shows the planning that we had
Right.
going into this, that we front loaded a ton of information and really thought everything through, and that is really what's kept us, got us where we're at now.
Yeah.
And so yeah, front load as much as you can and do the research. Be honest. That's another thing. If you think it's going to cost, well, the joke when we opened the brewery, all the brewers and all the breweries kept telling us, and we've been hearing it for years, whatever you budget for the build out, double it. And whatever you figure how long it's going to take, double that. And we're like, yeah, we know what we're doing. And they were being conservative in those estimates.
Right.
So listen to people in your industry and people who've been there. They do know what they're talking about. And when they tell you something, you might add a little more to that.
Right.
And so we did. Everything came about where we expected because of that front loading
Right.
on the financial side of it. And being honest, if we're like, well, I know this is going to cost X, especially with technology today, you can find the price of almost anything or the cost of things. It's like, okay, well, this is where it's at. I'm going to add 10%. We were adding 10% to everything, and we were lucky we did. Yeah.
So do you use any software for your financial piece of the business?
We QuickBooks is on the financial side, integrates with the accountant, so that's a seamless integration with the accountant. And then our point of sale system is industry specific. We're supporting a local company up in Denver, Rived, which our point of sale then is specific to the industry and then coordinates with QuickBooks. So we kind of have this real seamless from right here at the bar all the way to the accountant is a seamless transition of information, financial information. And that's important. It's not like, oh, I got to go here to find this or go here to get this or, oh, now I got to go look over here. It's all seamless. No matter where you're into, you can pretty much get the information you need.
And at what point did you hire an accountant to help you?
Trying to think of when, right at the beginning, that was another part of our front load, is that we were talking to an accountant before we even, I think we'd signed the lease, because that in a brewing industry, nothing happens till you have a lease. You cannot get a liquor license, you can't get the federal brewing license. I mean, nothing happens until you have a lease. So as soon as we signed the lease, now it's real, things are moving. We met with the accountant right away and said, we don't know what we're doing. You know, and we were honest. That was the other thing. When you go to people and say, hey, I have no clue what I'm doing, will guide us through this, that made a big difference. And again, that's that front load, being proactive.
Right.
If you wait till you need it, it's too late. And so our accountant, she's awesome, and she helped us that first stage, and then it was like 6 months later, we're like, what do we do now? And worked us through that. So when it came to this tax season, they already had background knowledge of us, which really, you don't think about it, you think just give them numbers, but having that background knowledge really helped them with helping us financially on our financials. So having that personal relationship also made a huge difference.
Yeah, it's a very, very important, like you were talking about the attorney, an accountant, those are great assets to have at your disposal.
They are. And again, I wish I'd have known about the resources of the SBDC because that has been tremendous for us. And having that information ahead of time, and I can't emphasize that enough, be proactive and get it before you need it. Because like I said, if you go to find an attorney when you need one, it's too late. If you get to your accountant, oh, my taxes are due this month, and then you get your account, you're doing yourself a huge disservice to your business, and then to your employees, and then your community.
That's really some good advice. So let's talk about the HR aspect. Obviously, you have employees.
Yeah. Yep.
What is your hiring process like?
Again, fortunate. Very fortunate. We know there's a huge employee shortage right now, but we have got such a great team. They came to us, actually. I think everybody that we have brought on the team has been referred to or has come to us and said, wow, this place is awesome, can I work here? So we've been very, very fortunate. We did open up we did some social media applications and some others, and we just got flooded with applications, and that made it hard. I thought, oh, this will be great, and it's like, oh no, now we have all these choices, It would have been easier with fewer and good choices. So that was the kind of the hard part of it. But the good side was that through referrals, friends, Sean over there knows Kevin, one of the owners, and Andrew came referred from other brewers. So we were very fortunate. We did not have to do that. We were able to get great teammates right up front on that aspect of it. The what else about on HR that we did, hiring? We still do. I think one of the things that really helped us, we had to make a decision on our business model, full-time employees, which I come from that mindset that's how you take care of people. You give them that security. But then that's not necessarily the trend anymore. And so we had to make a decision. Do we hire a solid core full-time group or do we open it up? And we kind of opened it up and we found a lot of our team, they only want to be here a couple days a week. And they like having that freedom, that choice, adapting their schedule. And so that was something that we had to, keep pulse on the trend. And the trend is right now a lot of people do want to have some freedom in their work choices. So that was kind of how the model we decided to go with was to give the employees that option.
So as a teacher, I'm sure that has served you well,
yes.
Being an owner and a boss.
Yeah.
Challenges with HR, with employees, how have you dealt with that? And kind of, it sounds like you've got a great team.
We do. We have a great team. All of us believe in autonomy. Here's what we expect of you. We lead by example. I think that also helped get us people on. When we opened, it was all owners, all spouses, all kids on deck, serving beer, washing dishes, taking the trash out, cleaning the bathrooms. It wasn't, hey, I'm the owner, I hired you, go clean the bathroom. It was like, we lead by example. There's nothing, if I'm walking through and I see trash on the floor, I pick it up. And that's that culture that we want, and I think everybody saw that. So that kind of then leads into that autonomy. It's like, here is your job, do it, and do it how you see fit. The servers that are back here, we tell them, sure, I set up the glasses on the shelf, it doesn't mean it's right, just because that's where I put them. When you're doing this job every day, you can decide what is the best route, and so we give them that ability to make changes without asking or being worried about, did I do this right? It's like, well, if it isn't right, we'll fix it. It's not that big of a deal. So in giving them that autonomy with the customer, if the customer's not happy, make it right. Do what it takes. Or so that's kind of been our approach to it. And I think having that mindset and that culture then attracts the quality employees that want to be part of that as well. That's who they are also.
Right.
And so HR-wise, so that's been pretty solid. Making sure we're in compliance. That was a big deal. That was something none of us had dealt with before. None of us had ever, Kevin does. Kevin has employees, so that's been a resource we had. So Kevin and his wife Melissa, she's like, hey, we need to get this done and get this put in place and stuff. So being in compliance for employment was a big deal. You helped out tremendously with that yes, thank you. So making sure that we're in that was kind of our biggest HR thing.
Yeah, it's, when you first open a business, you don't know what you don't know.
Right, yeah,
so
exactly.
There's a lot of things and that's why you have to rely on other people to help you. Workman's comp insurance and unemployment insurance and, all these things that if you work for somebody else, you don't really necessarily know about. So it's good to have good partners in that. It is. And on that HR note, definitely SBDC Rihanna with HR Solutions, just absolutely huge help with that. We knew what we were going into, but again, like I said, if you don't, when you brought up, you don't know what you don't know, and that's really what is a key thing, is admit it and just find somebody who does. Yeah. So I think you're pretty self-aware. What's your personality type, and how does that kind of? I'm
blue, whatever that means. No, as a teacher, I've done so many they always do the personality things, and I always forget them. I'm pretty well-rounded, me personally, kind of well-rounded. Obviously social, being a teacher, and brewing. That's actually how I got into brewing, was the social aspect of it, and providing for friends and family. That's really how it. You go into brewing, you're like, oh, I'm going to save money. Well, it's absolutely not true. And everybody thinks, wow, you drink all this beer, and you're like, no, I don't. And matter of fact, I've got more than I can get rid of. So how do you get rid of all this beer? Well, you have parties, and people come over and drink, and boy, you get all kinds of new friends when you have free beer. And so our barbecues turned out to be a lot of fun, and so that's kind of my personality is that. But and we all have on the team, we all have different personalities, but everybody is very understanding and aware of each other, and that's what makes it work.
So the last question, you mentioned that you have another, it's you and another owner. Mm-hmm. So how do you work together with that other owner to make sure that you guys are growing together and you're on the same path and that sort of thing?
When we first started, that was our front load, is what does this look like as we go in? Obviously, I'll be the head brewer and I'll brew beer, but Ryan likes to brew beer, right? And so, but the business is not about the beer. You can be the best chef in the world, but if you don't have customers, you don't have the atmosphere, you don't have the culture, it doesn't matter how good the food is. So we looked at it for Ryan, Kevin, and I. Kevin being a contractor, he has very specific, it's his wheelhouse. He's done so much of the build out for us in here. When we have questions of that nature, that's his responsibility to take care of. My responsibility is the back of the house, the brewery itself. That's my area. Front of house, we all kind of manage that. Not manage it. We let Shauna manage it, and are here to support Shauna. She's in charge of the front of house, and it's her responsibility. So again, we delegate that out. And then Ryan, working remotely, he does not live in town, unfortunately. He's trying so hard to get back here. So made that quite simple, and we thought this is going to be very advantageous to us, that we have somebody here to manage the daily operations, but now we have somebody who can't be here, so he manages anything that can be done remotely. All of our social media, all of the accounting, all of the paperwork, our licensing, and having those absolute defined responsibilities really makes things smooth. It really does. We're not stepping on each other's toes. There's not 3 of us in the back trying to make beer. There's not 4 of us up here trying to tell Shauna how to do her job, which she does better than any of us can do. So I think that's what really helped, is one, having that distance between us, because now Ryan can't do certain things. Well then, okay, now that shifts some of the responsibilities that he can do on him, which then frees up us to do other things here. So that's good. I know not everybody has that situation. That's a unique situation for us, but I can just, if you do start up a business like that, make sure it's defined who has these responsibilities. And it doesn't have to be black and white, but just, if it can be done remote, this is the person who does it. If it has to be this side of the building, this is who does it. And so then you're accountable for your own work. And that's been nice. I mean, I can call Ryan and say, hey, we got this, we put a new beer on tap. I send him a picture. Can you get this on social media? Can I do it? Yes. But not while I'm also trying to make a product or do other things. So having those separations has been absolutely key on the team.
Right. Well, with that, I will turn it back over to Mackenzie. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Can we do that when we go to the question and answers? Yeah, because that's a long story.
Yeah, we'll do that when we go.
Yeah, it's been a big question for us, and it'll be good to address.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. So before we get to the questions, why don't you just tell us a couple of hardest challenges that you have found in the last couple of years, and then a couple of the things that you're really proud of.
Hardest challenges was that low point when we lost our funding, lost the building, there was 100 other things that happened in 1 week. That was our hardest thing to accept. But And then obviously then the year delay was huge. But keeping a positive attitude about it and say, okay, this is what we are faced with. How do we overcome it or circumvent it? We can't get through it. It's just not going to happen. So, you know, you lose your funding. I can't just go find funding. You lose a building. You can't just go find a building. They shut the world down, you know, so you can't change that. So how do you go around it, over it, whatever, to maintain, and how does that look to get there? That was our biggest challenges. And again, I'll put it right back to the team that we are all positive people and positive outlook, future forward looking, and that really helped. And everybody throwing ideas in the pot, and it's like, well, let's try this, let's do this, let's do this. So those were the biggest challenges that we faced. Things we're proudest about, we made it. I mean, that's it, we made it. And we made it ahead of schedule as far as where we were. I've mentioned I'm a teacher. I love what I do. In our original business plan, this is one thing we had to change. I was not going to stop teaching. I was going to be the head brewer and oversee brewing, and we were going to hire a brewer. Well, we ended up with this building, then when this evolved and that evolved, the brewery evolved, and all of a sudden it's like, why are we going to pay somebody to do what I love? And they're not going to have the same care in it, not that they wouldn't do a good job. And so that was the hardest decision, me personally, that I had to make on this business was leaving teaching. I love doing it. I just love it. So that and the security. Oh, wow. My principal kept asking, he couldn't hire my position until I actually formally gave him a letter of resignation. And I just couldn't sign it. I'm like, ugh, and I'm like, I love the kids, and boy, I like a paycheck. You know, it's nice knowing I can feed myself and keep a roof over my head. So personally, that was the hardest decision and to overcome and make. And once I signed, it's been a huge relief, and it's looking forward. I'm excited about where we're headed. And it is in the best interest of the company. And that was the other thing I had to consider. It's not about me. Part of it is obviously being one of the owners with the vested interest, but it's not just, you know, what is my security? If I'm not here, what does the whole business look like then? Is that in the best interest of all parties, the employees, our investments, financial and emotional and time and all that, is that the best interest? And so it was after I looked at it from that perspective instead of my personal perspective, it was like, no, this is absolutely the best interest for the health of the business, is that I'm here running it and being the brewer, head brewer and stuff. But you know, and I know I can't do it again, so got Andrew over here. He's awesome in the brewery. He's been helping out. So that made a big difference too, is that, okay, yes, I'm going to quit my job, lose my security, but now what do I do? Well, I bring in somebody that can support me and really make sure that it was the right decision. And so we brought Andrew on board, and he's been just great supporting me on that. And so those are the biggest challenges. Yeah. We have personal challenges, and they're hard. That's the hardest ones, I'll be honest. And then the challenges, obviously, with the world shut down and stuff of that nature. But yeah, we're proud that we got here. We're proud we're farther ahead than we ever imagined. We really didn't expect to be where we're at. It evolved quicker and more, but we were able to do it within our budget, with that mindset of doing it ourselves. And we had the luxury of time, forced time, to do it ourselves. I could take a week to research how to do something, you know, whereas when you're trying to get open, you need that cash flow coming in. You don't have that luxury. So that was our silver lining for that. So yeah.
So what, as we wrap up before we go into questions, how do you want your customers to feel when they leave? Like, what's kind of that bottom line, you know, feeling you want them to have?
Just part of us, just a member of the MASH Mechanix community is what we want. We want to be community driven. And that was from the beginning. When we first started this, when we got this building and it was infested, it was nasty in here, I put a call out and said, hey, we're opening a brewery. Anybody want to come help clean this old abandoned building? And next thing I got 15 people out there. And those 15 people for a year showed up 20 people would show up. We have a list. We have our founding members club is a lifetime mug club membership here. It's 35 people that showed up and worked for free. They hauled out. I'd put out there, hey, we're hauling cement by hand today, and there'd be 20 people here with gloves, and I'm like, wow, that's awesome. So just having them feel that ownership and sense of belonging here, that is what we wanted. Obviously, we're operating a business and stuff, you know, and I always joke around to some of the customers that it is a for-profit, so we can't keep giving you everything, you know. But having that sense of community, we opened the brew house to home brewers. I mean, that's where I came up, and to me as a home brewer, if I could get into a brewery, I was like, oh my God, this is it, you know. And so we opened it up to home brewers. Matter of fact, 3 of the beers on the board are home brewers that have come in with their recipes, and we help them and tweak it, and they come in and actually make it. So we're again part of that community. So it's that the fun community experience is what we wanted to have.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I wanted to ask too.
Yeah.
I'll ask questions, but what's your favorite beer?
Oh,
and what's the most popular one?
Okay,
I think everybody's wondering those two things.
I do not have a favorite. That's like which child is your
children?
favorite?
I know.
Yeah, no, I don't have a favorite.
The firstborn.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I don't know. Again, that's where we came from, a beer for everyone. I go back to my log book, and it could be 3 or 4 years since I brewed that style or that beer, and it was an amazing. I mean, it was like one of the best beers I ever brewed, and I wouldn't brew it again for another 2 or 3 years. So that's what separates us for a lot from the other breweries, is that we try to do a little bit of everything, and that also is that fun part for me to do that. I don't know. Larry's Lager would probably be it. Our most popular is hazy IPA, hazy anything. The IPAs are the most popular by far. The one I'm most proud of is Larry's Lager. It's named after my dad. He was my biggest beer critic. I brewed and brewed and brewed, and he'd be like, nah, it's okay. Nope, that's no good. I'm like, Dad, I just won 3 medals with this beer. What do you mean it's no good? No good. And it took me forever to get a beer that he said, that's my beer. I want this on tap all the time. And so that's kind of the one. So we named it Larry's Lager. Most of our stuff's an automotive type theme, a gearhead theme. And then when we came to that beer, what are we going to rename this beer? Because we always just called it Larry's Lager. And we're like, well, let's just keep it that way, because that's what it's been. And that was one of the hardest ones I've ever had to come up with to satisfy him.
Of course.
So yeah. Questions?
Yes, how did the pandemic affect the opening of the
Yeah, the pandemic really affected us is the delay. The delay. Pushing it back. The uncertainty was like, wow, do we even actually want to do this at this point? Do we cut our ties and just, do we say, this isn't worth it, and cut our losses? That was a big one. That was some hard conversations. Do we cut our losses and not go, how long is this going to last? And so that was one of the big effects that we had to really think about and come to terms with. The community, helping the community, that was something else. We thought if we open, is that the right choice for everybody involved, all parties, not just us, but the brewing community, and we decided it wasn't. That was not what, they're already struggling. They were in a totally different position, so we held off on that, and we pushed everybody on all our social media, go visit this person, go visit this brewery. 1350 Distilling across the street has just been awesome. They were so great for us getting open. Woody over at Brass Brewing, man, it was either 1350 or Woody's, or Brass Brewing when we got done, and we would push that out. Hey, go support your community, and the whole community was coming together. Go to support this restaurant, eat out, do things of that nature. So that's, I think, were the biggest impacts. Were the delay in time, the expenditure that we incurred because of that. The cash still went out whether we were open or not. And having to make those hard choices of how do we manage that cash going out without cash coming in? Do we get some cash coming in on to-go sales? And then can we make it? That was a big thing. How long can we last till we can can do it. So yeah,
That's
good
great.
question.
Any other questions? Yes. And I'm going to repeat your question for people.
The background that you have in education, not managing employees and that type of thing before.
Yeah.
What do you think within that industry prepares you into launching in this?
This, yeah, how
Let
did
me
you-
repeat the question
Okay.
just for everybody.
Yeah.
So how did education prepare you for this?
This, one, being able to sit up here and speak. I'll be honest, when the governor came, everybody's like freak, everybody's, the energy level was real high. And I was excited, this is a huge opportunity for us and a privilege, but I was able to maintain. So I think being comfortable with that. Don't get me wrong, I still get nervous. I hide it better than others. I think that's what a teacher does. They just hide it better. So being able to communicate, that's where education, my teaching really paid off in owning a business, is that being able to communicate, listen, being able to listen to other people's needs or wants was huge for us. Yes, I actually hear what they're saying or wanting or needing, even if they can't express it. And then being able to communicate that back. And communication on our team was a big factor. We talk daily, and it's not, oh God, I got to talk to my partner, or oh God, no, it's like, oh, he's calling, what does he want, or what do we need, what do we got to do? It's still that, having that excitement in that communication, good or bad, is what really did it. So, yeah.
That's great. Rihanna?
Yes.
So much for all you do for our community. We're so happy to have you here at ECO. What I'd like to ask you is, what was your journey becoming a brewer, from sparking that interest to learning how to brew, becoming that home brewer, and growing as a home brewer?
So what sparked your interest, and how did you grow?
How did I grow? As a brewer.
As a brewer.
As a brewer. I was hanging out with a bunch of teachers, and I'll be honest, they drink a lot. They do. And we were just hanging out, and one of my co-science teachers like, oh, I make this beer, you got to try it. And I'm like, no, I've had homebrew before, and it was it was like 20 years ago. It was terrible. And he's like, no, you got to try it. And so I went over to his house, and I did. I was like, wow, this is good. I was like amazed. And he goes, oh, it's so easy. And I was like, no. And so we did a batch. I went over to his house one evening, and I'm like, wow, this is cool. I got a hobby and I get to drink. It's like, oh, this is cool. And it just went out of control from there. I got hooked. I mean, I was at the store buying my equipment. I was researching, and it just progressed. And for me, it wasn't, everybody thinks, you as a brewer, you're always drinking, you always got a beer in your hand. And it's definitely not the case. All of a sudden now, I made this beer. It's like being a chef. When you make a cake, you don't eat the whole cake, right? And so all of a sudden now I got all this extra beer. What do I do with it? Well, I can't make more till this is gone. So then you get people to start drinking, and then you get that feedback. And that's what I started looking for. Hey, what do you think of this? And talking to people, and then so that it progressed, and it's like, well, I get this feedback. To be better, I need this equipment. So then I get this equipment, and the progression of equipment went from plastic buckets to stainless containers and kegerators full of kegs, so it progressed kind of like all hobbies do. And then just by chance, I threw some beer in a competition. Everybody kept saying, your beer is so good, and I'm like, no, it's just beer, And my very first homebrew competition through the Brew Brothers at Peterson, I get a notice, hey, you need to come to the competition, you won something. I was like, oh wow, no, really? And so we went, and we're in the audience, and they call my name, so I won, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I got my medal, my first competition. And then sat down, yakking away, and all of a sudden, Leif Anderson. I was like, who? And, they called me again, and I was like, no way. And so, I medaled twice, and I was like, wow. And so then I started to actually listen to what I started accepting the positive feedback I was getting, because I was always feeling it could be better. And I still have that, to me, nothing's ever right. It's got to be tweaked. It's all good. It's great, but I can always make it better. And so that's how that homebrew journey. And then the competition started, and it was never to win. A little bit of a competitiveness, obviously, but it was to get that feedback. And some of my best feedback were my worst scores. It's like, I get a score back, and I'm like, oh, they trashed me, and read through it and it's like, okay, this is why, this is what I have to do. And then it also kind of leads back to being an educator. What do I need to do to improve myself? So it was more, the competitions became more of a self-reflection and feedback to make myself better at the business. And never had intentions of doing this. My friends coerced me and talked me into doing this, and I'm glad they did. I was absolutely not. I was a teacher. I was like, no, this is it. This is where I'm going till I can't do it anymore. But they talked me into it. My teammates at school, fellow teachers, talked me into it. Everybody just kept saying, no, you need to do this. And so that's kind of how I ended up here. So
That's great. Any other questions? Yes.
Being obviously homebrewers, that you can help kind of educate, perfect the recipes, that kind of stuff. How else do you want to incorporate your education background into this business? Because that's obviously a passion.
Oh, it is.
How do we continue that forward within this model?
How do you take education to this? Back to your business.
I'm going to put Andrew on the spot. Andrew's our cellarman, as we call him, working in the brewery. We brought him on, 0 brewing experience. He's done some homebrew, but he has a passion for it. He has a great attitude, and so that allows me to continue that, to bring in, mentor him through, and I hope he sticks through it to go on. It'd be awesome if he opened his own brewery or became a head brewer somewhere. That would be amazing to me. So bringing in people and mentoring in the brewery side of things, or the business side. I have no problem helping. We have another beer tender. His goal is to open a brewery, and he was very forward with that. Hey, can I come sling beer? I want to open a brewery. Absolutely. He was honest. He's a great guy, works good, has a passion for the industry, and we can show him, give him that, and he's willing to start at the bottom. He didn't come in asking for information or how do I do this. He's like, I want to work my way through it. And it's like, that's the kind of people we want. And knowing that we can grow them to move on. And so, yeah, that's kind of how my teaching continues.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Good. Leif, thank you. This was incredible.
thank you.
Jackie, thank you at ABC Bank.
Yes, thank you.
We're going to get a little tour of the space.
Yeah, we'll go around and get a tour, and then if you're thirsty, we'll open up the taps. It's never too early. we'll just make the glasses smaller. That's it's exactly it's quality control. Exactly. You've got to make sure everything is.
It's that education. We're just helping.
Right.
We're just helping and supporting.
So
well, awesome. Well, let's show us around a little bit if you can.
Yeah. We'll just make a circle around.
And everybody can come.
Take my coffee. Yeah, everybody should join us. So the tap room side, obviously, is the front of house where the customer sees everything. This is where we have to have, that first impression and last impression. It's, as they're walking out the door, that's an impression as well, not just when they come in. So, and again, back to our team. I'll watch Andrew back there. He's got his hands full in the brewery, and somebody's walking out the door, and he's always, hey, thanks for coming. Have a great evening. That wasn't trained, wasn't prompted, anything, and that's also that culture we want to have in here on the front of house as well. That, can't always joke what cheers norm. Everybody's welcome. That culture that we have here. So, our tables are old bowling alleys out of Fountain Bowling. When they tore down Fountain Bowling Alley, we were able to get some of those, and then a friend of mine made the tables. So that's, again, that community buy-in. He made all the tables for us. The benches came from a little church up in Denver and Washington Park they were getting rid of. We're like, how do we repurpose this? And so then our volunteers would sand for hours. Oh my gosh, they joked that they could, their fingers were numb from sanding. But again, building that community, and now they love to sit on, like, this is my bench. I worked 8 hours on this bench. It's mine. And so that's the kind of the feel we wanted to create here on the front of house with it. Sean is doing an awesome job managing that, running that, make sure everything is smooth and going good. So that's this side. Any questions about the front of house or any front of house operations questions that we can help out with? Everything?
I have a quick question
Yeah.
about your tap tables.
Yeah, the tap handles?
Not these.
Oh.
These right here, the one that's the wrench.
Oh, these.
Yes,
So,
those right there. Those are very cool.
Yeah, so these are actually, this one is a Ford Model A wrench. When you bought the car, you actually got wrenches because you had to work on it. So that's probably 30s, 40s wrench. This one I found at a pawn shop, I don't know, antique shop. No, I actually made them for my business, Brighton. I mean, we've been friends since forever. And at some point, you're like, when it comes to birthdays, Christmas, whatever, you're like, I'm not getting you anything, or we're past that. You know, it's like we're brothers. But we still do things. And so he had a kegerator at home, and so I made these for him. Now he's like, dude, those need to be in the brewery. So he brought them in and put them in. So that's where those came from. Those tap handles my dad made. Those are engine parts out of NASCAR race motors that my dad, he made those for us. So yeah, we that whole do-it-yourself mentality and creativity, we all the way through to the end and it's us doing it or friends, family, community that do it. Our logo was designed by one of our volunteers. When we had the legal logo issue, he's like, he didn't even offer, but his buddy's like, hey, he's a logo or a designer. And we talked to him and he's like, oh yeah, I'll do it. And we're like, wow, he hit it on the spot the first try. So it's having that community involvement. It's a long, hard uphill climb if you do it yourself. And so yeah, so that's kind of where some of this stuff comes from. Just
That's cool.
yeah.
So are 13 of those, is that on purpose?
So originally, yes, we were going to have 13 taps, and then one of the breweries helped us by providing the back bar there for the tap bar, our drain board for us was 16, but we're like, well, let's still stick with the 13 taps, and then we did the 2 on the end, or the nitro taps for like a Guinness style beer on that. But yeah, so there was we kept the 13 to it as well. So yeah, it was a good eye.
I love how you didn't use the top of the kegs for your shelf.
Yep. The tops of the keg rings for the shelving. We did the covers up there, those pipe covers. Those are the original chimneys from the building. And so we're like, we don't want to cover them up. There was some history to them there, so I can imagine there was an old stove, a wood-fired, coal-fired stove here that fed them, and so we wanted to maintain that, so we didn't brick them over, we didn't knock them out. So a lot of what we do in here, we try to retain the heritage and history of the building the best we can to it. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's come a long ways. So any other front of house questions, or yes?
The sign on the back door says mask required to enter.
Oh, because the door's usually open. When the door's open, people can see that when they come in. Yep. So,
Is that true?
yeah. So when we're open, yes. Yep. We follow all the guidelines that we're required to. Yep. Let's see here. Any other questions from the house? No. Okay, we can go this way, and we'll kind of start with the brewing process. So that was one of our customers, Zach. He is an amazing artist. He works on cars. That's kind of why he loves it here. That was our grand opening gift, was that skateboard deck for us that he did. And there's a whole story painted into that board that he created about us getting started and going. So that was our gift, our opening gift from Zach. The fish there was an opening gift from a friend of ours. We grew up Arizona and Colorado. So that's the license plates are all from Arizona and Colorado, and we love fishing and fly fishing. That's why we moved to Colorado so long ago, was for the outdoors. So that our customers also look at what we've done to get here and have done special things for us that represent that for us. So yeah, they're awesome. So the brewing process starts here with our raw ingredients, our grains. These are all malted barley, flaked oats, things. So these are kind of examples where the grains start. These are the same grains, but they've been roasted to different levels, just like coffee is. So that gives you different flavors, styles, colors, things of that nature. We use mostly proximity malts out of the San Luis Valley, so we're trying to source as much as we can local, support the Colorado and as local as we can. Our honey comes out of La Junta. We have another honey distributor we just received up in Fort Lupton that we're going to start using. So we're trying to keep as much of our inventory product local as we can. You know, without local support, we wouldn't be here. So we're going to push that and continue that as best we can on that. So all the grains start here, sourcing them, getting the recipes built right, and getting them divvied up for our process. So then we'll head back to the brewery back this way. If you guys want to kind of swing over here, we can. So this is where I love to be. This is my spot. So the brewing, it starts here in the mash tun, they call it. We put all those grains, about 300 pounds. We soak it at 152 degrees for an hour, and that extracts all the sugar, the carbohydrates out of it. It's like, just imagine the sweet, almost like very fluid honey. It is super sweet that we extract all the sugars out of there. We take all that liquid called wort, transfer it over with a pump to this. This is the boil kettle. And we boil that sweet water for an hour and a half. This is where we add some hops. You can add honey, we add coriander, spices, whatever is going to go in that beer. And we'll boil it for an hour and a half to create some chemical reactions in the beer. And then we transfer it over to these vessels. These are the fermenters. This is where it becomes beer. We put the yeast in here. If it's an IPA, we throw more hops in, things of that nature. It'll sit in here for about 2 weeks. We can control the temperature based on the style of beer, what we're making. It'll be in here for 2 weeks. When we finally decide it's done, it's ready, we'll transfer it over to these 2 tanks right here. And this is where we carbonate them, and it's called bright beer. It's when you put the CO2 in it, it becomes bright and gives it a little time to clarify in these tanks. So about 3 days in here, and then we put it into the kegs. So once they're in a keg, we could serve them. IPAs serve fresh, so they get kegged, they go on tap. Some of the other styles like to age and get better. So then we try to let them sit another week to 2 weeks in the keg, called Keg Conditioning, if we can. So from start to finish on a brew day is about 7 hours to do a batch of beer. And then once we get it brewed, we're looking at about 4 weeks to 6 weeks. So we really have to be on top of our inventory management, because if we start running low, it's too late. You know, it's like, oh wow, now I'm in trouble, because it's going to be 5 or 6 weeks before I can get a beer back out. So yeah, that's kind of the whole process that we have going through.
It was awesome. Thank you so
Yes,
much for
thank
showing
you
us
very
around.
much.
This is so
Yes,
great.
Thank you.
I mean, it's amazing in here, so I think everybody's excited to
Yeah.
sample a little
Sample,
something.
yes,
And
we'll
so,
head over.
and just wanted to say again, thank you so
Yes,
much,
thank you.
Mechanix, and then to ABC Bank, obviously, for sponsoring this.
Yeah.
And then we're going to 503 West next
That's
time for Small
excellent.
Biz Real
That'll be
Talk.
exciting.
So we're going to talk to Nina Lee over there about 503 West. So thanks for joining us, everybody. Support small businesses like Mechanix, and we're just thrilled to have you. So let's head over there and
Thank you.
thanks.
Let's go get some beer.
Yeah, it's funny how whenever we start talking about the brewing process, it's like, oh, well, you know, I like the malt versus
Oh yeah.
color. It's like, well, it's just roasted.
Yeah, it is. It's